everybody, and welcome to another broadcast for GameGuru Classic and GameGuru Max. Broadcast number 111 and growing. So before I get into today's broadcast, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me okay. And to that end, I am going to look at my little chat window. Just a little disclaimer, my secondary screen has gone green. I can still see stuff, sorta, but it might take me just a little fraction of a second longer to actually find buttons and resize gadgets, etc. I know what it is. You know when your monitor cable wobbles out, now your monitor colours change. It's that, but I don't know whether what's it called now? The DPI standard can wobble out. So just might be the monitors on the blink. But just checking the chat. Yes, you can hear me fine. Sorry for the witter. So, broadcast time. How does this work, peoples? Okay, it's super simple. Ask me your questions. If you have a question, stick a question mark at the end. We are joined by TGC members floating around the live chat who can answer questions and will, if the question has an answer that they have. Any questions that cannot be answered, I will answer in the second part of this broadcast, which is the Q&A. The first part is traditionally reserved for a demo section where I can show off some really cool, shiny internal developments that's been going on in GameGuru universes. Alas, this week's broadcast is going to be light on demos and less light on news. There is stuff to show, but it's all got wires hanging out, and from bitter experience, it's not an enjoyable experience watching me pour through lines and lines and lines of code. Maybe 2% of you out there really like watching someone else troll through code. Most people don't. So we're going to stick to the stuff that's new, fresh and interesting, and I'll have something cooler next week in terms of a demo that I can demonstrate in either Classic or Max. The first part, because now we've extended coverage into GameGuru Classic as well as GameGuru Max, we'll start with Classic. And I was going to do a lot of demoing, but then I just had a chat with one of my teammates, and we really want to not stretch it out, but there's better things to come, and it's not quite ready. So I'm going to show something, let's call it a little sneak peek, and then I'll have actually more high quality content to show next broadcast in the next Classic section. So yeah, I've cut short what I wanted to show. Anyone who's been reading my screen has probably guessed what I'm going to talk about in GameGuru Classic Lang, which is the imminent release of a new DLC. Now, this has been available for some time, but it's only recently that the idea struck that we could make it an official DLC. Why? Because it's so cool. And so I just want to give you an introduction this week, which is GameGuru. Now, anyone who's had a hard user of GameGuru Classic already know where this is going. What is GameGuru? Well, it's the answer to a question that's been posed for years. Can I do cutscenes in GameGuru Classic? Well, really you couldn't. Unless you was a scripter, you kind of didn't have an editor for that. GameGuru addresses that problem, fills in the gap, and allows you to create cutscenes. All the different kinds of cutscene behaviors that you might experience in modern games, you'll find a tool in GameGuru to do that. And as I said, this is an introduction, and it's certainly not exhaustive, and I am not the expert to talk about GameGuru in any sort of detail. What I can tell you is when you get this DLC, it's everything that you need. A really great manual. A lot of effort's gone into making this manual look good, very informative. And if I switch over to the software, GameGuru Classic, I'm going to have to say no, aren't I? Yes, you are, Lee. There's a folder, GameGuru, and inside here you get some examples. So you don't have to start from scratch, pouring through the user manual, just loading an example and away you go. Now, as I said, there's going to be more detail, possibly in the form of some video footage next week. More structure, more better presentation. For this week, I'm just going to press this button just to show you one of the examples, and I'll let it speak for itself. All I will say is, you see this little grey blob? There's a trigger zone there. That trigger zone is a trigger zone from the GameGuru pack, and it's going to cause these two characters characters to do a thing. So let's walk in and I'll shut up for a bit.
General, there's a problem in Sector 34. The main door won't unlock for any personnel.
That's a door down the hall, isn't it?
Yes, the big red one on the left.
You can have my key, if I could find it.
Okay, so super exaggerated conversation there, but I think it was meant to label the one of the tropes that you find in many modern games. But if anyone who's sort of a long-standing user of GameGuru Classic, they know what they just saw. That was a sequence of actions. That wasn't just one object doing one thing. That was a chain of logic, all connected together to create a narrative, which, if you take that to its ultimate conclusion, it's cutscenes. It's cutscenes for your game, and not a video that you play that was live. It's controlling the game objects to create that narrative. And that's basically the heart of GameGuru. But as I said, this is just an introduction. I'm probably not doing a very good job and not doing it justice, so stay tuned next Wednesday for a more polished introduction and explanation of exactly what GameGuru can do for your game making projects. Okay, let's move on to the next section. As I say, I have an extremely green screen. This would have been nice and slick and smooth, but because I can't see the button, you're getting a short delay. But now I'm quite happy to move on to the next section, which is GameGuru Max. Yes, an eventual smooth transition into the second part. And again, I would so like to show you some stuff. A lot of stuff have been going on, not just on the bit that I'm personally working on, but in general. But none of it is really ready for public consumption, and it might just annoy. But what I can tell you is what's actually going on in the coding world. For my own plate, it's the continuation of working on the DirectX 12 conversion. Not a simple task by any means. A lot of it's already been done, thanks to the Wicked Engine, and further done thanks to Paul. I just have to finish it off, and I'm taking my sweet time in making sure that it does everything. The reason is when you swap out your underlying graphics API from, if it was from say 9 to 11, it'd be relatively easy. To go from 11 to 12 is a nightmare. We lose the drivers when we move to DX12. Everything is so close to the metal, everything crashes if you don't do it perfectly. And for some reason, on one particular issue, in terms of rendering to an off-screen surface, I'm not doing it perfectly. And the worst part is the crashes are random, which makes it very difficult to locate exactly which resource is playing silly buggers. So that's what's happening in the main. Of course, at the end of it, I will be able to deliver a beta version of the DX12 edition of GameGuru Max, and then you can pop it onto your systems, let me know if everything's okay, play your particular game projects, play the demos in general, and I'll be looking for feedback to see if we've caught all the gremlins and we now have a very solid and robust DirectX 12 version. That's priority. I was going to fold in VR at the same time, but as it apparently revealed itself to me, DX12 cannot be taken lightly, and it can't be done quickly. It has to be properly done and properly tested and solid, so it doesn't do randomness and crashes. So DX12 is taking up all my particular focus right now. Once that's done, I've made the decision, I say I, it's basically a team effort, that it makes sense to upgrade to the latest version of the Wicked Engine. There are some new things that have been introduced recently. One of them, I suspect, is a way we can do a performance boost. And that's kind of what we'll be looking for when we start doing VR. So before we even touch VR, even though we've actually done quite a lot of VR in the background, before we get to switch it on to a point where at some point we'll be able to demo it in the broadcast and then release it in an update, we want to make sure that the just before we start VR is as fast as possible, or at least as fast as is practicable. And then once DX12 is solid, it's as fast as it can be, and we're on the latest Wicked Engine iteration, then we have the luxury of going into VR confident with a good foundation and then do a really good implementation of VR. So that's basically the order that you're going to be watching out for. What I haven't mentioned is as soon as the DirectX 12 binary is solid, and it really, you know, it can't crash anymore because we've run the software 14 times and every which way but loose, and it always works, then I'll be updating the GitHub repository, the public one, with all the code changes. So, and I'll also probably introduce that in a future broadcast where I show you how to grab the repo, fork it, compile it, drop the executable into the correct location, run that executable, and then you get your, let's say, your own version of GameGuru Max. So look forward to that in that order in the weeks to come. So that's all I wanted to say. It's really more of a newsy broadcast than a demo-y broadcast, but I did want to leave some time, and I think we always never really have enough time, but I think this time we're going to get a little bit more time for the next section, which is, thank you very much, massive green screen, I have to really squint now, is the next section, which is the Q&A. Okay, usually I can run the Q&A video and then switch to some other screen. I don't really have another screen, so you're just going to have to see this screen again. But what I do have in bright green is the live chat window. So just to break the mold, because we didn't really find a way of putting the live chat inside the recordings for YouTube, I'm going to drag it across here. And I don't apologize. I think it's really good to mix it up from time to time. So let's go there. As is my custom, I look for orange, which is one from Zach, which is a question that was asked but not answered. And I do like to answer things in the order in which they were asked. So Zach, what have we got? It looks like, doesn't say who it's from, but the question is, are you going to make it easier to import custom characters, as at the moment it's hard to get them right? The last update, the very last update, included a new feature. Not super obvious that feature exists. It was done to facilitate the animation library additions that we did to the core product. But if you go into Model Importer and select some bipedal character that you've got from an asset store, if you set the collision to character, it used to be called character collision, it's now just called character. Set it to character. When you export that model, it will export it as a character. It will be set up as a character. And that will give you some additional powers in taking that bipedal model, random arbitrary rig that might have animations, and it's now as an object, understood that that object is a character, and then you can apply character style behaviors to it. It's still not like no-brainer out of the box. Import any object character that you've ever found ever and drop it in. It's still a very technical art to line up the idea of geometry, textures, rigging, animations, logic to control those animations, scale, performance, polygon count. The list will go on. That's why we created the character creator, to make it super easy to create a character, dump it into GameGuru Max, and it just works with everything. It works, it runs at the right speed, it's the right size, it has logic, etc. The moment you drag a character kicking and screaming from the outside world, that character doesn't necessarily follow all of the rules that GameGuru Max game engine needs for that character to perform. But we have made one step with the addition of the character mode in the model importer. So do let us know if you're successful with that and what the next stumbling blocks are to get your particular custom character into GameGuru Max. But for those who don't know anything, use the model importer to start that journey. And I would suggest you use GLTF format over FBX. GLTF version 2 is a newer format, more reliable, and we have seen better success stories when you use GLTF over the ancient and varied FBX format. So it looks like we've got some regular questions coming in after the one from Zach, which was asked earlier, and the first one of those is from Requiem. Is there any way to disable the anti-aliasing effect in GameGuru Classic without sacrificing other post-process effects such as LUT and the lens flare effect? So you want to keep LUT and lens flare, but you want to get rid of the anti-aliasing effect. Most people want to keep the anti-aliasing effect as a feature. Actually costs cycles to generate that sort of effect. I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's a way you can sort of have most of your cake but not eat the cherry in the middle. I think it's part of the post-processing is either off where you don't get anything, including anti-alias, but when it's on, it's a different shader, and that shader may have an implicit integration for anti-aliasing. I think we use FXAA. I have a suspicion there is a way to either dial down the intensity of it or switch it off, but don't quote me on that. But just to, for a solid answer, I'd say, to my knowledge, you can't decouple any anti-aliasing artifacts you might be seeing without switching the whole post-process system off. However, the HLSL shader is available. You're quite welcome to pour through that, see if you can comment out certain sections, and then have your own custom shader. And once you've got HLSL, delete the .blob file, rerun GameGuru Classic, and it'll be using your shader rather than the one that we've provided. Okay, another question. This is from Morebot Gaming. It would be nice to maybe have a streamlined system for FPS player model weapon customization, a template or something. There is one for GameGuru Max, but it's only in guide form. If you go into your GameGuru Max root folder, you'll see immediately there's a folder called Docs. That's been empty for nearly ever. I mean, it's been empty for about a year and a half. It ain't empty anymore. We've actually started creating guides for you. Guides to how to create an object, how to create a basic weapon, and how to make a behavior. So go check out that folder. There's lots of information. These guides aren't complete. We've really just started. Call them drafts. But if you find that there's information missing, let us know, because that's the best way we can flesh out those guides. Instead of just waffling on about random information no one actually needs or cares about, you read the guide and then you think, right, that's great, but now I need to know XYZ. Let us know what XYZ is. That means when we add that to the guide, it's super useful for the next person that comes along and reads the guide. So just look in the docs folder and let us know if we need to add more. But that's your starting point for customizing the weapons that you see when the player's running around. Or I wouldn't even say weapons anymore. We're extending the new weapon system, so it's like non-weapons, just thing you hold in your hand and you can use them in the game. That's how we're going to extend it. So let's not call it weapons. Let's call it new stuff that you hold in your hand in first-person perspective. Here's a question from Donald. Is there a way of having game over when all AI is dead instead of going to the exit? There actually already might be a script for that. I'm losing track of how many scripts with what we now call behaviors, because they're coming in so thick and fast. And I ain't writing them. Netcrim59 has probably added more behaviors than the entire team has added in the 2 years of developing GameGuru Max. It could very well be that behavior already exists. The closest one that I know about, because it came with the box product, is, I think it's called collectible, or collectible count. And what that allows you to do is set certain objects up with this script, and then as you get rid of those objects, this count goes up. When the count gets to a certain thing, you've won the game. So that's kind of what it does. Problem is, if you assign that script to the characters, the character doesn't have its own behavior. So it kind of self-defeating. So I would say that there isn't a script for that from the TGC camp out of the box. Great idea though. We should definitely add it. So if it doesn't already exist, stick it in the issues board. There should be a link somewhere around our socials on how to get to the GitHub, GameGuru Max, issues board, post it, and if you think it's super urgent, then also send an email to me with the link, and I'll tag it up with the correct tags and assign it to the correct person. Okay, looking for a question, and it's actually a bracketed question. This is from BGS Informatica. Can we use /import own created parts inside Character Creator? That's a great question. There is no out-of-the-box way of doing that. That is to say, there isn't a button where you can say import head or import body. All of the body parts are sort of regimented into a particular format, file name conventions, and it'd be very dangerous to go in and just add your own stuff willy-nilly. But it was always intended that we're going to create the ability so people can import their own stuff. And I think we'll start that process with a guide. So the guide would actually say, this is how you would prepare the models, this is the naming convention you'd use, and this is where you place them. but I'll probably create some additional folders where you place them in a separate place than the default character creator body parts. That way we can separate the official stuff that shouldn't be overwritten, and then all of your custom stuff that you brought in. So that's probably another good candidate for the issues board. And then send me the link, and then that'll sort of start a chain reaction, at least to get the guide started. So here's a question from SampayFS Gaming. When do you enter the zombie respawn? Do I enter the zombie respawn? I suppose we could reinterpret that question as, can you get zombies to respawn? I think you can. I think if you kill a zombie and then you reactivate it, so set a trigger or some other logic event to attack that zombie with an activation command, it should respawn. It should respawn. I say should. Of course, if we had more time, I might be able to fail to demonstrate it. But as I want to dedicate this week's broadcast to more answers than demos, yeah, maybe that's something for when we're in the Max editor and I can show it quickly. Next question from Lucas. Yes, there is. How about the DPS for the hurt zone though? Question mark. I need it for grassy chamber. Sounds like I've intercepted the middle of an interrogation, so I don't really understand the context of the response to something that was probably posted earlier. So let's get on. See if we can find a question that is fully self-contained. This is from Charlene. I've animated a horse on the jetpack model. Come on, let me read that again. I've animated a horse on the jetpack model. How will be until I'm able to animate my character / HUD characters. Well, the jetpack model, that's only available in GameGuru Classic, so I assume we're talking GameGuru Classic here. And I assume in this you want to animate the jetpack. Now, you know, I think the jetpack does hold information for animation. You know, the needle, the fuel needle that goes up, that's not a bitmap, that's a separate mesh within the model. And we animate that needle to rotate on one axis in order to go from full to empty. That suggests to me that there isn't the ability to animate that jetpack model. Now, the jetpack is a bit of a hack for GameGuru Classic. It was, you know, you can have a weapon or you can have the jetpack. The jetpack was pretty much hard-coded. And because of that, I don't think you have a lot of control over those animations. There might be a little bit of a hack, but it's certainly not open for everyone to just add their own stuff from the editor side. I think you're going to have to recruit someone from the community to go into the public repo for GameGuru Classic, locate the jetpack stuff. To be fair, a lot of the jetpack stuff was moved to a Lua script, so it's a little easier than going into C++. And to interrogate that system and find out if there's any nice, clever, easy way to expand the features of it. But that sounds quite fascinating. That shouldn't be a huge amount of work. And then give you the ability for non-weapon jetpack style things where you can collect it. And I presume this is a magical horse which flies around the sky, galloping. That would be cool to see. But yeah, out of the box, I didn't think we got support for galloping magical horses. This is from another question from Scalden Wolf. Is there an ETA for RPG? RPG is technically already started. Thanks to Necron59, we have a few candidates for behaviours that definitely fall into the RPG camp. And to that end, one of the things we'll be doing is expanding the number of categories for the behaviours. At the moment, if you're familiar with the behaviour library, you've kind of got objects, players, markers. That's about it. Problem is the objects folder is getting very full, as everything seems to end up there. That isn't a character-related behaviour. So we're going to split it. We're going to split it up and add categories for RPG, puzzle, possibly effects. And inside the RPG category, you'll start to see new behaviours appear there. That isn't the complete solution. You won't get RPG all in one go. You're going to get it a bit at a time. And so the behaviours is the first thing you're going to see. Logic that you can add to your levels to create RPG-style mechanisms that you're going to need in your games. But it will never be complete until you are able to customize your in-game screens, and that's the core engine. That's where you can go into the screen editor, add your own inventories, player progress, skill trees, etc. Import your own images, connect them to logic, connect them to the behaviors, and then you've got the full RPG experience. So yeah, there is no ETA. It will come in stages. but you'll probably start to see the word RPG appear in your builds in weeks, not months. Okay, looking for a time. We're at 9. Yeah, okay, 25 minutes in. I did try and pledge to all and sundry and the universe in general that we won't go over 30 minutes. I think we're quite safe, so we can answer a few more questions before we get to that terminal penultimate question from someone who hasn't asked a question before. So if you haven't, and you have a really juicy one, you might be lucky enough to answer a really clever question, and we might be able to do it verbally, and if not, you're going to have to hold you in your memory until next week. So who's got the next one? Nightfall X says, or asks, would there be behavior to behavior change option? There is. You have to go into the behavior editor, and it's called run behavior, and you can select another behavior. Just give it the file name, offset from the script bank, and you can have one behavior trigger another behavior, and then there's another command which lets you return from that behavior to the original calling one. It ain't perfect though. It's sort of like a dark art of, you can't change the behaviors properties of the behavior you just called. It just runs off its defaults. Not ideal at all. So there is a plan in the works where you can stack multiple behaviors per object and edit the properties of each of those behaviors. That's the one I think you're waiting for. You can sort of do it now, and in fact, if you look at something like the character for a soldier, they will have character attack. But if there's nothing to attack, they call patrol. And then if there's any waypoints or paths nearby, they'll follow that. Soon as they see some enemy, jump straight back into character attack and then unleash hell. So it already happens, it's demonstratable, you can see it happening right now with behaviors, but we want to flesh it out so it becomes more user-friendly than having it hidden inside a few actions in the behavior editor. So, yeah, we're looking at 27 minutes in. Let's pick 2 questions from someones who haven't asked a question before. I think that's fair. And if not, we'll go back to the top and find another question. I think Bob from Sorry Games hasn't asked a question before. Any chance for vehicles for GameGuru Max? There's always a chance. In fact, I've already seen a demo of a vehicle in GameGuru Max. Completely unofficial, of course. But in answer to your question, you're talking, you know, official. We want official vehicles. All kinds of vehicles. Motorbikes, jeeps, cars, trucks, helicopters, motorboats, etc. Absolutely wants to do that, but we have a roadmap that ends with our version 1 that doesn't include vehicles. After version 1, the world's your oyster, and we'll have opened up the source code for quite a while by then. It could be that will already have been implemented by the community before we get anywhere near it. So for version 1, we're doing RPG puzzle, VR, stability, and better performance and VR. So those are the things for version 1. After that, yeah, I would like to look at vehicles. Not necessarily try and do everything under the sun, but open up some more functionality on the lure side and the physics side. So at least someone out there can cobble a few things together and get some early bit vehicles up and running. But it's certainly not our priority on the roadmap up to version 1. So hopefully, if you're holding your breath for it, hopefully that'll kind of give you a different direction in the short term to go in. And let's see who else hasn't asked a question before, just to keep it nice and fair. Oh, Tam51 hasn't asked a question before. I know I've asked this before. But when will we have breakable glass? I can make glass blow up, but not breakable. Surely, if you blow up glass, it is definitely broken. Glass, it would break, wouldn't it? But yeah, we do have something in the works. I've mentioned it before. We're working internally on something called, it's a working title, the building editor. Kind of speaks for itself what it is. And predominant in the assets you need to make a building is doors, staircases, and windows. And so the windows we're using now are just the ones that you get in the stock art, where you can just drop them in and they're indestructible. So we are looking at these windows thinking, you know, whilst we're at it, whilst we're adding metadata for these windows that are now more than windows because they're clever enough to insert themselves into the building editor, couldn't we have an extra property to have the glass smash and have the individual window panes like set into LED framework so you can smash out individual panes? So these are questions we are asking internally, and we are going to make some more doors and windows and staircases. And whilst we're on the job of creating art, how much difficulty would it be just to add, I don't know, an extra texture where you got nice shiny glass and then glass with a little crack in it, then glass with a lot of cracks in it, and then no glass, and then maybe use a volumetric particle effect to show all the beads of glass flying around everywhere. We add it all the way back in FPS Creator, we should be able to have it in GameGuru Max. So we are looking at Windows, and it could be that's one of the things, or at least a starting point for adding the ability to damage glass in one way or another. Even if it doesn't disappear altogether, layers of damage might be on the cards. So thanks for all your questions. I know there's more, and I know you wanted me to waffle away for another 25 minutes. But apparently YouTube, most of our viewers don't like me waffling on for 60 minutes. So I think 30 minutes is a nice tidy sum. Thank you for all my teammates for joining us this late hour and helping answer some of the questions. Thank you all of you for joining in at such a late hour wherever you are in the world. The next update won't be Friday or next Friday. It will be when we have a really nice beta of the DirectX 12 implementation. And I'll put it out through the socials when that's available, so you can go check it out and see if it works on your particular system. I'll be back next Wednesday at 7 p.m. BST. I think it's still BST. Still very hot in Wales right now, so I guess we're still in some part of the summer. So until next Wednesday, I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. I certainly have. And if I can find my button in all of this green, I'll see you all next week. Goodbye.